First, start out by brushing the hair, making sure there's no knots or tangles in it. Then section a section of hair at the top of their head like you would for a normal French or Dutch braid. And I'm going to ask her to hold it out of the way. Then I'm going to pin up a ribbon underneath the top section of hair. You can see I just wrapped the ribbon around a bobby pin and then secure the bobby pin underneath the top section. I always like using a few bobby pins to make sure it's totally secure. It's a good idea to tug lightly on the ribbons to make sure it's not going to slide out. And add more bobby pins if need be. So now it's time to actually start braiding. Divide the top section of hair into 3 even sections. The first stitch of this braid is a normal French braid stitch, so bring the outer strands over top of the middle strand on both sides. And then I'm going to take the leftmost strand and ask her to hold it out of the way. Just like you would for a normal French braid, gather a section of hair at the left side of the head, but instead of adding it to the strand, it's going to become a new strand. So weave the new strand over top of the strand of hair beside it, and then we're going to weave it under and over the 2 ribbon strands. So the ribbon strands become new strands of hair, and we're going to take the new hair and put it underneath the first ribbon, and then bring it over top of the second ribbon. And then at the other edge, weave it underneath the outer piece of hair, and then ask her to hold it. So it's just weaving that outer piece of hair through all the other strands. And we're going to repeat the process on the other side. So gather a new section of hair, weave it over top of the hair strand beside it, under and over the 2 ribbon strands, and then under the hair strand on the far side. And then I'm going to ask her to hold the new strand, and then bring the first strand underneath and add it to the leftmost hair strand. And then I'm just going to repeat the pattern going back and forth. So gather a new section of hair on one side of the head, weave it over top of the hair strand beside it, under and over the ribbon, and then under the hair strand. Now I'm going to ask her to hold the new strand and bring the old strand on the edge underneath the newer strand and combine it to the strand beside it. So what's pretty much happening is I have 4 strands that I'm keeping in the center, and then she's holding another 2 strands. A trick that I've learned to keep the ribbon straight is make sure that you keep enough tension on the ribbons so that they don't bunch up and that they stay flat. So you're going to start the pattern on the other side. Gather your new section of hair, bring it over top of the hair strand, under and over the 2 ribbon strands, and then under the hair strand on the far side. Ask her to hold the new strand and bring the old one underneath to combine with the hair strand beside it. I'll show you a few more times. So gather a new section of hair on one side of the head, weave it over top of the hair strand, bring it under and over the 2 ribbon strands, and then under the hair strand on the far side. And then switch the positions of the 2 strands of hair, and then add that strand back to the main strand beside it. So over the course of the braid, the 2 hair strands that stay in the middle are slowly growing when they get hair added to it, and the ribbons are staying flat in the middle. You can see I'm just weaving it through all 4 strands and making sure that the ribbons stay flat. Sometimes I need to pull a little bit extra on the ribbons just to make sure that they don't bunch up. And then once again, bring the older strand underneath the new strand that you just weaved across the braid. So you can see right here that I'm tugging on the 2 ribbons to make sure that the checker pattern stays consistent. I'll show you again. Gather a section of hair on the side of the head, weave it over top of the hair strand, under, and then over the 2 ribbons, and then underneath the hair strand on the far side. Switch the positions of the two strands that she's holding and combine it. So I've repeated the pattern a few more times, and you can start to see the checker pattern now. The two ribbons in the middle are being alternated so that they look sort of like a checkerboard. I'll show you the pattern one last time. Gather your section of hair, bring it over top of the strand of hair beside it, under and over the two ribbons, and then underneath the strand of hair on the far side. Then switch the two strands of hair and add the older strand to the strand beside it. You can see right there that the ribbons are starting to bunch up, so I tug on them lightly to straighten them out. So I've gone ahead and repeated the pattern all the way to the end. So just here I have my last piece of hair, so I weave it over the hair strand, under and over the ribbons, and then out the far side. And then I switch the positions of the two strands. A trick that I've learned when you get to the end is that instead of adding the strand of hair to the strand beside it, you can reweave it back through the other strands. It helps lock the braid in place so it won't slide out. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side just to make sure it's not going anywhere. The next part's a very important part. Once you get to the end of the braid, make sure to tug on the ribbons so that they stay flat and straight throughout the entire braid. At this point, you can finish off the braid however you like, but I'm just going to end it into an elastic. Just combine all the strands, the ones that she's holding and the ones that I'm holding, together and wrap it with a hair elastic. Once again, I tug on the ribbons to straighten them out throughout the braid. At this point, I like to go back and tug gently on the edges of the braid, just to make the braid look a little bit fuller. My ribbons are actually quite long, so I could just cut them off, but I like keeping my ribbons long just in case if I'm braiding someone with long hair. So I'm just going to wrap it up around the elastic and tie it up into a nice bow. So here's the final look. I love how the ribbon goes throughout the entire braid and makes it look almost like a checkerboard. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel for future tutorials and follow me on Instagram at braided_to_infinity. Thanks for watching!